Hello and welcome to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Robles, joined as always by my friend David Sparks. How's it going, David?
Hello, Stephen. I am doing well, except I have something going on with my HomeKit right now that is driving me nuts, but we will talk about that later.
That will be coming, yes, in the more power users. But you also heard not only feedback about HomeKit, but about our Star Wars bonus episode. What did you hear, David?
Yes, I have been told by many listeners that I am completely wrong in my negative assessment of The Last Jedi. And
oh, really?
I believe everyone is entitled to their opinion. That's my response.
If you are not signed up, if you're a current Mac Power User, More Power Users member, or if you want to sign up, you obviously get the ad-free and More Power User segment every week. But we did our first monthly bonus episode. We just want to let you know again. We're calling it, was it Pro Max? I forgot what it was. Mac MPU Pro Max. That's the name of the show.
Yeah, there we go.
That's what it is.
Pro Max.
MPU Pro Max. It's a separate feed, so we'll put a link down in the show notes where you can sign up for it. But yeah, we talked a little bit about Last Jedi and all the Star Wars movies. So
Yeah.
Go ahead and just forward me those emails. I'd like to read those too.
I will send them to you. You can put them on your wall.
I'll frame them. Yeah, I'll print them out.
Mr. Robles was correct. Anyway, I don't need to relitigate that. I'm good.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, that was a thing I got. Thank you everybody for letting me know your opinions. Not a single person supported me. That was
really
that broke my heart just a little bit. But
I know you're not alone in that feeling though. But anyway, okay, we'll save it. Maybe that's another future bonus episode.
Yeah. But the bonus episodes are going to be, we're going to try and do them monthly-ish, as we say. We've already got the next one scheduled to record. And it's going to be a lot of fun. But they're not going to just be popular culture. We're also going to do kind of deep dives. We've already got a topic for the next one, and it's more technical. Steven's going to help me out with something. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So go check it out. Get the ad-free extended version of the show every week, plus that bonus episode. And we really appreciate your support. But you know what I was thinking today, Stephen, is like, what I really need right now in my life is I need to improve my shortcuts. If there's only like a university I could go to that studied shortcuts, wouldn't that be a great thing if that existed?
It is so funny you say that, David, because it just so happens that I just launched a Shortcuts University on-demand course. And so thanks for letting me plug it. But I did a live cohort for 13 weeks, and I had a bunch of people join me live. And now I've made that into a 13-video series that you can watch at your own pace. But I'm doing like a $50 off thing right now, and so I'll put a link in the show notes. But if you want to learn shortcuts from the very basics, from scratch, all the way to using it with Apple Intelligence and external APIs and all the things, it's now available, and you can jump in there. And there was some really positive feedback from those who joined me live. So Shortcuts University, put a link in the show notes. So thank you for that.
You and I both over-deliver on these things. You did 13 sessions, and same thing with me in this robot thing. It was 10 sessions, and now I've added a second session per week, so now they're getting 19 sessions.
Oh, wow.
But it's great. Just, you get excited about teaching this stuff, and people want to learn, so you want to make sure they get it.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like a great course, Steve. We'll put a link in the notes for people. Today on More Power Users, we are going to talk about my tale of woe. Following up to our Apple Home episode we did a while ago, I have to train myself out of the word HomeKit. That is deeply ingrained. But I've been having issues, and we're going to talk about that in More Power Users today. So that'll be kind of fun as you help me diagnose what the heck is going on here.
So wild, yes. So hopefully to help you with that. And before we get into today's main topic, which I'm very excited, I have many things off camera that I'm going to reveal to you, and there'll be links for the images in the show notes.
Excellent.
But there was massive news yesterday.
Yeah.
Apple officially announced that Tim Cook will be stepping down as CEO, and John Ternus will be taking the reins as of September 1st this year, which is wild.
Yeah. Wild and not really that surprising, right?
Well, we knew it was going to happen. Obviously, lots of rumors. Mark Gurman, the Financial Times, lots of news outlets have been saying this is the plan, this is going to happen. There was speculation on will it happen before Dub or after, or even after the administration changes, because Tim Cook has a lot to do. But Tim Cook will be the chairman of the board, and they say in the newsroom articles, which we'll link in the show notes as well, that he's staying on to continue working with things like for supply chain and with political leaders. And so it's probably a good setup where Tim Cook will still be around to deal with some of those things, but John Ternus can really focus on the products that will be coming forward. And Johny Srouji, who's behind all the Apple Silicon, he has been promoted to now Apple's chief hardware officer, and so he's now in the C-level suite.
Yeah, yeah, and they've kind of broken up hardware, so they've got divisions within it with leaders for like silicon and hardware and all that. And Johny Srouji's in charge of it all, which is kind of interesting based on the rumor that he was thinking about leaving a few months ago, and then he said, "No, I'm staying." Makes you wonder, right, how all that went down.
Well, and that rumor was Mark Gurman at Bloomberg. He said that he might be at risk of leaving. And shortly after, a memo had leaked from Apple that Johny Srouji sent to his team saying, "I'm definitely not leaving." So curious, what source Gurman might have had versus, Srouji wanting to correct that. But they've probably been talking about these moves for months now. And so that leak seems strangely spurious.
Okay.
But I'll also link Tim Cook actually wrote a community letter in addition to the newsroom article where he actually had some really heartfelt things. It felt like one of the most transparent things Tim Cook has written in many years. And, just really heartfelt. And I did a little video that I'll link in the show notes too, just about Ternus, because, we've seen Ternus a lot in keynotes. He was announcing the Apple Silicon transition. He announced the Mac Studio. He was the last person to announce the last Mac Pro, the M2 Ultra. But he's been at Apple for 25 years and behind a lot of the product lines from the beginning, even like the iPad and the AirPods. John Ternus has been instrumental in a lot of those products. And people inside Apple have said he's truly an engineer at heart, very detailed and meticulous. So I'm actually excited for the next phase of Apple.
Yeah, and he was the guy on stage, I believe, at the WWDC Stephen Hackett and I attended, where they announced the Pro Display XDR.
Yeah.
And then with a straight face, the $1,000 stand. He was the guy that did that. But I mean, the very first time I saw him get on stage or before camera for an Apple event, I don't remember when it was, I said, "Man, that guy just looks like a CEO. He's got the look." And everything I've read about him since really makes me feel like he's probably the right choice, and kind of a man of the people among his department. And I've heard that he has, played roles in some of the software development as well in terms of encouraging them to do certain things. And in my opinion, software is where Apple has fallen down so hard the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. I used to be a business lawyer, and I was involved with a lot of CEO transitions. And, there's different kinds of these. There's the ones where the company's failing and you got to get a new guy or gal who's not part of the company, and turnaround person, they call them. Right. And but when you have a successful company, the transition, in my experience, is almost 100% always going to be the person who runs the most successful division of the company. That's the person who usually gets the job. And hardware has been remarkably successful lately, and it makes total sense that they give him the job. And a lot of people are thinking, well, he's a lot different than Tim Cook. Well, Tim Cook was a lot different than Steve Jobs. So I think it's all for the best. I hope that he makes some changes, and I hope that some of the things we're not happy about with Apple software, developer relations, some of the things that I think they've kind of gone the wrong direction on, get turned around.
Yeah, I think I'm also interested how he will steer the ship in regards to AI. Obviously, Apple Intelligence and that whole rollout has been a bit of a debacle and delayed, and John Giannandrea just left Apple officially I think in the last couple of weeks. And so seeing how John Ternus steers that, and Steve Jobs, obviously innovation genius leader, Tim Cook, a different kind of genius, business and profit, and has grown the company exponentially. But I do feel like I've said in the past that Apple could use another product-focused CEO, someone who understands how people use the products, understand the intricacies of what is the software keyboard like and how should people use it, the kind of stuff Steve Jobs spoke into a CEO. It feels like John Ternus is going to be that kind of guy too. And so I'm excited for this next phase. John Ternus is 51, same age that Tim Cook was when he became CEO. Yeah. So we likely have another decade or 15 years of John Ternus as CEO, and I'm optimistic for this.
Yeah, me too, generally. On the AI question, I saw Ternus and Joswiak interviewed recently by Tom's Hardware. I'll get a link for the notes for that. And AI came up, and Jaws spoke about it. Ternus didn't say much, but Jaws was saying, "You got to understand, we're barely out of the starting gate here, and we don't need to be in a big rush." And the thing I worry about when they make statements like that is that I feel like Apple has got this posture in the last 10 years with software where they say, well, we want it to be simple for the users. I mean, they've always said that, but
Sure.
but now you combine that with the fact that a lot of the software doesn't work. So simple is not an excuse for inadequate. And, teaching this course on the robot assistant, I've got people in there who've never programmed, who are making really powerful agentic automation and doing stuff with their computers. And like, they talk about how they're excited every day to get up. And one of them said the other day, this is just like when I first got a Mac. It was like every day there's a new discovery and I get to make it do stuff. And if Apple's not part of that conversation, people will go elsewhere. And honestly, they have such an opportunity now because they own the stack. Like, they have good processors. They got this great silicon. If they had agentic AI that was local entirely, they'd be safe for people to use without having to send money and data up to Anthropic. I mean, they could really dominate that stuff, but I just don't know if they're interested in that.
Yeah, I do want that quote on a shirt, though. I feel like simple is not an excuse for inadequate.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of businesses could use that.
Yeah.
But in the same way, I think Apple, they have erred on simplicity for a long time. But it seems like Ternus, being kind of an engineer first, again, I'm optimistic.
Yeah,
I also
too.
found it interesting in doing some research on him. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. His capstone, senior capstone, was a robotic arm to help quadriplegics eat. And I found it interesting that his work on accessibility from college carries into his work across the entire AirPods lineup.
Yeah.
Where now AirPods Pro are certified hearing aids by the FDA. And he also worked at a virtual reality systems before Apple. That was his one other job before he joined Apple in 2001. And again, as we head into a new world of hardware with augmented reality glasses, maybe even an iPhone Fold, I'm excited to see Apple push forward and raise the bar in some new product categories and maybe revamping some of the current ones. So we'll see.
And one last bit on this thing is Tim Cook's legacy.
Yeah.
I think obviously he's been tremendously successful in raising the value of the company, and you look at it now versus the time Steve died. I think John Ternus would be hard pressed to match that in terms of percentage growth and everything. I don't know that's even possible. I do wonder about Tim Cook's long-term legacy, though. So I feel like the jury's still out on that. We've got the stuff he's doing with politics. We got the reliance on China, and there are a lot of, or even I think the degradation of developer relations. I can't understate to the audience how much the developers I know have soured on Apple in the last 10 years. I mean, people who are lifelong Apple developers now really, they're just not in a good place with the company right now. And they feel like that they're, being tread upon. And I feel like they have work to do. And so hopefully they can turn some of that around.
They have work to do. And I think even in the consumer space, Apple has had dials at their disposal to turn to increase the money flow. And Tim Cook has turned some of those dials in the last few years, whether it's advertising the F1 movie through the Apple Wallet app, putting Apple Care Plus notifications in the settings app that you have a hard time dismissing. And just not even us in the tech bubble, but I think real people just in the world feel that push and pull of like, man, it feels like I'm being advertised to on my own devices and Apple devices, let alone where I didn't feel like that before. And so while, Tim Cook might not be solely responsible for all of that, I do think some of those feelings have been a result of a very profit-focused trajectory. And again, maybe someone like John Ternus can return to, like, obviously hardware is still where Apple makes most of its profits and revenue, but to make products and to that be the growth, the hardware innovation be the growth, rather than the services and upsells and things like that.
Yeah, I hope so. And the other thing I would say to the audience is these things take time. He's not going to Apple is a aircraft carrier sized company. You can't turn it on a dime. So the changes he makes are going to take a few years to show up, but it's going to be nice with the new guy in charge. And honestly, I don't have a lot of animosity towards Tim Cook. I think he did a great job for the company. He handled a lot of things better than I would have been able to handle them. But I like you, I find distasteful the focus on, recurring revenue, and just some of the stuff they're doing just feels to me like, come on, guys. Either way, congratulations to Tim Cook. You have a well-earned retirement. I hope you enjoy it, although it sounds like you're still going to be around a bit. And I wish Ternus the best. I hope that he brings some great changes and makes it even better than it is now.
Maybe it's serendipitous because the topic for today was Apple Watch, and that was actually the first major product category that Tim Cook introduced back in, actually 2014 was the keynote, and the Apple Watch came out in 2015. And I brought for you today the original Apple Watch from 2015. I got it on launch day. This was the stainless steel model with the Milanese loop. I still got the hard shell case. This came in a rounded wreck hard shell case, the original Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And just for this show, I bought another Apple Watch.
Okay.
I got a Series 11 just for the heck of it because I wanted to make sure I still preferred the Ultra. Turns out I do. But yeah, I got all these Apple Watches and I have a bunch of Apple Watch bands to show you later. But yeah, still got my original Apple Watch.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember I got the aluminum one, so I didn't get the fancy case.
Right.
But boy, that was fun. When it first showed up, Daisy and I both got them, but for whatever reason, hers showed up like a week before mine did. So I wore her watch for a week. My wife is so great. She's like, yeah, you can wear it for a week, whatever. Because I wanted to talk about it at the time, of course. And so I had the tiny one for a week. I remember that was great. And boy, that product has evolved a lot since the very first version, hasn't it?
It has. Actually, that was my first major product review. I actually got to do the written review of the original Apple Watch for Apple Insider.
Yeah.
And, it had apps from day one. I remember apps like Dark Sky were available. And it was so underpowered that those third-party apps were not a great experience. We're going to talk about apps a little later and your metric for whether they're good or not. But it was still pretty wild, to be able to get notifications on your wrist. The health part was a small component when it was announced, but I think now has become almost the central core of what Apple Watch is about for most people is the health, the heart and monitoring and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, it was an interesting device, and it was a brand new product category for Apple at the time.
Yeah. So these days, Stephen, what Apple Watch are you wearing?
So I actually have an older watch than you, I think. I'm still on the Ultra 2, which still has the blood oxygen sensor that was not disabled, or you don't have to do the things for it. But I have been rocking this since it came out. I had the Ultra 3 as a review unit, but I don't go outside or camp enough for satellite SOS, which is one of the big features of the new Ultra 3 to be worthwhile to buy a new one. So I've been rocking the Ultra 2. I'll be upgrading this year because I do notice a little bit of the battery degradation. But yeah, that's my Ultra 2 is what I rock. And I tried this Series 11 for a couple days that I just got for this show.
Yeah.
And I found that immediately I prefer the Ultra because of the larger digital crown. I feel like it looks better proportioned on my wrist. I got fairly big arms and stuff. And the Series 11, man, the digital crown feels so dainty and small going back to it.
Yeah.
And I like the thinness, but actually I like the substantial nature of the Ultra 2 and the Ultra in general. So that's what I go with. What about you?
Yeah, I got the Ultra 1 when it came out, and I kept that until just last year. I got the Ultra 3, and it was a battery issue, frankly. The Ultra 1 was perfectly fine for me, except the battery was really kind of suffering because they had that one. It was like 3 years old by the time I think I replaced it. And I know I could have replaced the battery, but I just, and I wanted to get the wrist flick and some of the new features that they had been adding. So I went ahead and upgraded last year to the Ultra 3. Like you, I immediately fell in love with the Ultra watch format. Like you, I've got decent sized wrist, but I think it looks nice on me. Unlike you, I am in my 50s, which means it's hard for me to read small text, and the Ultra has a bigger screen, which is nice. And I really, really love the action button. We can get into that later, but the having that extra interface element is quite useful to me. So there's a lot of reasons for me to like the Ultra watch. I think a lot of people kind of fell down that rabbit hole with us. I remember when it first came out, everybody made fun of it, and then I think at the time I had the Max Brachial Labs already going, and I would see everybody showing up for the meetups, and they'd all be wearing Ultra watches because they're just really nice. And like, if nothing else, you get the long battery. That's the one thing when I got the 3, I forgot how you can go like 2 days with a new Ultra watch and you're fine on battery life. So it's really nice. And I'm a big fan of the Ultra. The rumors there'll be an Ultra 4 this year, which would be nice if that's true.
It would be. And I will say one big difference, too, going back to the Series 11 for a couple of days, the rounded, curved edge of the display, I used to really like that. There's some watch faces that really take advantage, like the contour watch face.
Yeah.
But in use, I actually prefer the flat face of the Ultra, where there's no curve at the edges, and I find visibility for things like scrolling or seeing a notification. I actually prefer the very flat nature of the Ultra face as opposed to the series.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just like rugged watches, like tool. They call them tool watches. My analog watch is a tool watch, and so rugged is kind of my vibe. So this is the right one for me. Although I have a question for you. You have an Ultra watch. It has a cellular radio in it. That doesn't mean you've turned it on, have you?
I have turned it on. I like knowing it's there. I don't use it very often. In the rare instance where I'm without my phone, I like knowing I could get a text message or, send something out if I wanted to. So I do have cellular, and I'm paying for it, and I turn it on occasionally. What about you?
I, like you, I think I make about $150 donation every year to AT&T for very little reason.
Sure.
I walk the dog. So we have where I live, it's on a hill. So there's like a 2-mile hike, and I do that 3 or 4 times a week with the dog. And I don't bring my phone when I do that. I kind of like the idea of being present, and not having the phone is one way to do that. And so in theory, someday I'm going to be out on one of those walks and need it. But otherwise, when I go out, the phone is usually with me. So I'm not sure I can justify it, but I have nevertheless paid for it.
That's funny. Well, one of the other differences, too, with the Ultra, and I immediately realized this when I went to the 11, is you don't have all the face options that you do. You have a lot of the same face options from the series to the Ultra, but you don't get the ultra modular face. I forget what modular ultra duo?
Yeah, they have several. Yeah, they have an analog one too. Yeah.
And so I do prefer those. So I was curious, before we get into our actual faces, and we'll have images of all these linked below, do you change your watch face manually, by focus, by time, or all the above?
Yes.
Okay, same.
Yeah.
Same.
When I go to Disneyland, I have a special face that shows up when so I have some that are focus mode triggered, and some of them are just kind of my mood.
Okay, yeah.
I grew up reading analog faces, so that is natural to me. I know for some younger folks there's like a resistance to analog faces. So I do like analog faces, but I can just tell you right now that I feel like that my biggest disappointment with the Apple Watch is the faces. I just feel like they just haven't done a good enough job on those.
I mean, I think since the original Apple Watch, everyone in the Apple sphere is like, a third-party app marketplace for watch faces would be huge. Yeah. And there's a lot of like hacky apps that try to give you custom faces. And there's a setting on the Apple Watch where you can, go to the last app on wrist raise, but it eventually resets, and it'll eventually go back to whatever the actual Apple Watch face is. And I agree. I think, a third-party watch faces, even if it's like select partners at least,
yes,
and they've done that with Nike. Some watch faces are Nike watch faces. Some were only available when you bought the Nike version early on. But like, get Nomad in there or other accessory makers to be able to customize a watch face. And I think that would be at least a step in the right direction.
Well, even like, I forget what's the name of that fashion house that has the $500 Apple
Hermes.
Watch. Hermes.
Oh, and there are watch faces specifically for Hermes, but you have to buy their strap.
And some of them look kind of nice. I wouldn't mind trying one of those out, but I'm not going to buy a $500 band for it.
It's $500, yeah.
Yeah, but but they should, the knock against this always been, well, we don't want to junk up our beautiful Apple Watch with, a watch face that has a Portland Trail Blazers logo on it or something, because if you go back to the old Pebble watches, there were some really ugly faces, but there were some nice ones too. And Apple could, they could, have a approval process before things get out. But even just, I'll say on Apple's watch faces themselves, like, I really dislike transparent hands. Like, a lot of them, getting back to the fact, I just want to glance and see what time it is. That's like the first purpose of a watch. And like the California face is a really nice face. I like it. But a lot of them, unless you pick very specific colors, the hands are a thin outline with the background color behind it. You glance at it and it's not always easy to see what time it is because of that. It's like they don't have like a setting where you can like say make the hands stand out. And it's like an accessibility company like Apple, you would think they would have at least the ability for users to make it work. They had a really good face that I really liked. I'm a utility guy. They had a face called Utility Face, which came out with the original cellular face. It had white or red hands on a black background. It was an analog watch, kind of looked like a tool watch. I loved it. And then they just yanked it. I don't know why they pulled that out. It's not there anymore. And it's like, like I said, I have a rant in me about that. Every year when we get around WWC, I say, oh, this is the year. Hopefully they'll make a watch face store. And every year they don't. Now I don't even say that anymore because they beat me into submission on this. But I'm not happy with the faces. Now with that out of the way, what faces are you using, Steven?
Well, I have mine change per time of day and per focus mode. And so the one that I use most often is the Modular Ultra. That's the official name of this face. And this is the one I use every weekday during the day. This activates via shortcuts at 7 a.m. every day. And I like the Modular Ultra and missed it on the Series 11 because you can have 3 small complications on the top, plus the time, plus 1 large complication, and then 3 small ones on the bottom. And for mine, they're actually sponsoring this episode, spoiler, but I talked about them in a video, I think last year or months ago. Yeah. Mercury Weather is now my large complication. We'll talk about complications more in a minute. But this is my main watch face. This is what I use every weekday. When I do a workout, I have a separate watch face, and I have a shortcut that activates this watch face when a workout starts. It has the workout complication where you can just go quickly to the workout app. It has the movement and exercise minutes in the long graphs in the large complication. Then I have complications for cellular, heart rate, and blood oxygen. And this way, everything that I might want to see while working out, it's one tap away on that watch face. When I want to dress it up, I use the Reflections watch face. That was a newer one in the last couple of years, and I do like that. And I try to match it with whatever Apple Watch band I'm using, which we'll get to in a minute. Mm-hmm. And then in the evening, this activates with my evening focus mode. I have the astronomy, which I have the Earth. It's kind of zoomed in. You get to see your location with the little green dot. And I just really love the whole look of that. You just see the time and the calendar above that. And finally, on the weekends, I was never one to put photos on my Apple Watch because I found that the color of the photos would throw me off, and the pictures change fairly often when you have a photo watch face. But I realized if I use a filter, the duotone is a good one, but I ended up going black and white, and now on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, I use the Apple Watch face, photo face, just has the time and then photos of my family, and they're all black and white, and I actually like that look, just a black and white photo with the time. It's not super distracting. I don't look down and get startled by wild colors or a crazy image, and I really like being able to have those photos on the watch, and they change regularly, and you can tap the face to scroll through the photos too. So that's what I do. What about you?
Yeah, I, like you, am a fan of Modular Ultra. So if you've got an Ultra watch and you're not taking advantage of that face, you absolutely should. It's a rolling set of complications. We're going to talk about complications in a minute, but by default, it's usually the time and the date, the 2 big ones, so you can look down. Very glanceable information for me. So I really like that one. For analog faces, well, actually, before I get to analog faces, I also am a fan of this new Waypoint watch face, which they just released last year. And the idea of it is it puts a compass on your watch, but it also points out like waypoints that you've saved. I don't need that very often. I'm not out hiking, but I just like the look of the face. And they have an analog and digital variant of it, but the analog one is like half baked. I don't recommend that at all. It looks terrible. But the analog one, the digital one is nice. And if you look at it, it's a nice font. It looks good. If you put the date complication on, very glanceable and readable again. And it has room for 3 complications after you add the date. So I really like that one. Steven, have you ever played with that new Waypoint face?
I have. I actually have it set up, and I often forget to swipe to it. And which, just side pro tip, there is a setting on your Apple Watch. If you go to settings, general clock, I believe, and there's the swipe to go between faces. That's off by default now. That didn't used to be the case. But I like having that on, and then I can swipe back and forth between different faces that I have set up. And I actually do have that face kind of in process here on my Apple Watch Ultra. I haven't customized it yet, but I do like the look of that face, and I'm going to play around with it some more.
Yeah. Switching over to the analog faces, my personal, when I go in personal focus mode, I'm not working, I use the good old utility face, the original, like, good face they had on the Apple Watch One. That one.
That's what I used on the original, for sure.
Yeah, that to me, they've never, I mean, like, more like this, please. It's a very readable, it's got the date. You can put something custom on the bottom. I wrote Arate at the bottom. People know, they know. And it's got a couple complications on there. I like that. And whenever I'm in personal focus mode, that's the face that is present to me. And then with respect to, I should have mentioned, with respect to the modular face, I actually have different variations of it with color themes. Like Mac Sparky work for me is blue. Mac or podcast work is orange. So I can see the color of the face, and that tells me what focus mode I'm in. Kind of helps me stay on target. And I've been experimenting with, it hasn't made the rotation yet, but there's a one called Exactograph, which came out last year. And I've kept it live because it's just kind of fun. When you tap on it, it zooms in on the face itself, so you can see the seconds ticking by. You've got to just check it out. It's a fun face, and I'm glad they made it. But I would like to, like I said, I'd like to see more tool watch-based faces, kind of like the old utility. And I really am, I'm going to stop whining. But they need to do a better job on faces.
Yeah, it would be nice. At least either add a ton or, bring in some designers and say, these are added for the new OS.
Yeah.
But
or even a watch kit, where users can say, I want the hands to be this color and the number. It's just like on existing faces. Like that thing with the California face really grinds my gears because I really like that face. But I've got to use it with, like, I think the platinum color or there's like 2 or 3 colors I can use on it because those are the only ones where the hands are solid. I'm going to sound like the old man today on this show, I realize, because I'm also going to talk about a complication for my hearing aids. But it's good
though. I mean, it's accessibility, and again, it's got to be useful, and that's one thing I'll just mention. A side note: my Apple Watch Ultra 2, the battery health is at like 96%, so it should be pretty good.
Yeah.
But the cellular, I think I forget that it's on sometimes, and so the battery drains a little faster. And there was one day recently where my watch totally died.
Yeah.
And it was about like 3 p.m. and I didn't have a way to charge it because we were driving out somewhere. And I was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like, I don't use my watch that much. And it was in just that one evening I realized how often I look at my wrist for different things.
Yeah.
And not having it there, I really was like just missing it, missing some of the notifications, just seeing the time sometimes, but also other updates that I might have had on the watch. And so when you've worn Apple Watch for a long time, it might not feel like you use it often, but I know when I didn't have it for an evening, it was disruptive. I didn't like it.
Do you ever wear an analog watch, or are you just only an Apple Watch guy?
I'm only an Apple Watch guy, and one of the big reasons we'll talk about in the main uses is because food noms with activity tracking is now like a thing I do every day a lot.
Yeah.
And if I were to not wear my Apple Watch for a day, it's going to change my food noms calorie max.
Yeah.
And I don't want to mess with that. And the day that it actually ran out, where the battery ran out, it says that I went over calories that day, and I was so mad because like there's no way to like go back and tell it like, no, I didn't. And so there's this day in my food noms app, I was too bright, where it's like, I know I was under. Like I was 100% under calories, but because my Apple Watch was dead, there's like this valley in my activity for that day, and it just bothers me. So I don't.
No, that is like the tyranny of the rings, right? You start getting into it, but then you can't get off that. So I got broken of that last year. On Father's Day, my kids bought me a nice watch. Like it's not like a real fancy watch, but to me it's a nice watch, and my kids got it for me. And so I started wearing it on occasion, and then I because my ring streak's all blown up, and And I don't wear it every day, but sometimes when I'm going out, it's nice. And the nice thing about an analog watch is it tells you what time it is. Every time you look at it, you know all the stories. But I still wear my Apple Watch probably most days, and the analog watch is kind of a special thing, right? And since then, I went and got my grandfather's old watch tuned up so I can wear that for special events. And so I have times where I do wear it, but I feel like in doing that, I have broken myself of that tyranny of the rings. Like I go to Pilates 4 times a week, and if I don't happen to be wearing an Apple Watch, then I don't track a workout that day. So what? I never look at that data anyway. So I feel like I'm free of that now, but I also frequently wear my Apple Watch. That's by far the most frequent.
Have you ever thought about, and my other co-host Jason, he does this, wear like a fitness tracker in addition to the Apple Watch, so you can choose what watch you want to wear, but then your tracking is consistent?
I guess, if Apple made one, Stephen Hackett tried to get me into Whoop at one point.
That's what this is. This is a Whoop. I'll put a link.
But those are like $350 a year to keep them. And it just, it's like one more thing. And again, I'm not that into the metrics. I feel like I try to eat healthy. I try to exercise. I know the things I need to do, but I don't get down to the ounces and the standing rings and all that. I just don't do that. So I think it'd be a waste on me. I know another people told me when I got an analog watch, now you need to get one of those rings. Those rings look ridiculous. They're so big. And like, you're supposed to put it on your index finger. I mean, I got my marriage ring, that's the ring I wear, And so I'm just not super into the metrics of it all. So I that gives me an excuse to not do it. I did definitely get hung up on ring streaks and everything for a while, but then you start playing games with it too. So I get it. I think if it helps people, you should do it. My wife, who has heart issues, absolutely has to wear her Apple Watch every day. I mean, that's critical. But for me, if I don't feel like it that day, I'll put on the fancy one the kids gave me, and I'll be good.
Well, and we're going to talk about the health features and some personal stories in a little bit, but let's get to some complications.
Yeah.
All right. So my complications, mainly on my Modular Ultra, which is my main face throughout the day.
Yeah.
I have my rings on there. I do have the date. I love the AnyList app for grocery lists, and I do the grocery shopping in the family, and I really love AnyList on the Apple Watch. And we'll talk about apps we use specifically, but I have that complication just as a quick jumping to there.
Yeah.
I typically have a weather conditions widget. For a long time, it was the stock weather, and now I really like the Mercury weather one. Being in Florida, weather is always up in the air, and I really like being able to have that hourly at a glance.
Yeah.
And I also have shortcuts, not the shortcuts like shortcuts, but just like links to the home app on the watch, shortcuts, and podcasts all on the main watch face, which I've recently switched back to Overcast, actually, for my podcast app, and we'll get to that when we talk about specific watch apps. But those are a lot of my complications. Again, my workout complications are specific, and other than that, a lot of my other faces don't have complications because those are in the evening or on the weekends, and I like keeping those a little cleaner. So that's me.
Yeah, I think the Modular Ultra is a good platform to talk about complications because you can put 6 on there. Well, actually 7 because the big one. Yeah. So for me, the top left is always the hearing aid thing. So I have hearing aids, surprise, and I played in too many bands as a kid. But I have hearing aids. But sometimes you get in a crowded room and they're too loud and you want to turn them down or change the settings on them. And that's a thing that is really convenient to have on your watch because you can just tap it. They have a complication and all the controls I need are right there, and that makes it very easy. So that one is always top left. Top right for me is always timer. I am a timer fan. I love having timers. I meditate every day, but I also just say, okay, I'm going to give email 30 minutes and see how far I can go. And I just hit the timer for 30 minutes and off I go. And then in 30 minutes, the alarm goes off. I stop. I move on to the next thing. So I use timers all the time. So that is always top right, and the hearing aids is always top left. Now on the Modular Ultra, you can have more than, so I usually put environmental ones on the bottom, weather related stuff, etc. I'm playing with Apple Home as we talked about at the beginning of the show, so I put that on there at least temporarily as I'm trying to figure out if that makes sense. and then like the workout kickoff ones I put on there as well. So, those are kind of in flux for me, but the top left and top right are always taken by those two items. And every watch face I have, they have the exact same complication, the exact same place. Don't even have to think about it. Just reach and touch it.
Now, one thing I see on your watch face is you have the red dot for notifications.
Yeah.
You keep that on?
Yeah, I should probably turn it off, but I am pretty stingy about what notifications come in. And right now, in fact, in the watch faces I shared with this thing, I got the MLB app this year, and it keeps putting the Dodgers logo on the top. I got to figure out how to turn that off. I don't want that.
I saw it in a couple of your screenshots, and I was like, I don't know if that's a live. Live activities are a thing, and those go up in the shelf that comes up. Yeah. So sometimes it can be cool, but yeah, if it's placed there. So to be clear, the hearing aid complication, that's battery life, the 53 number.
No, it's showing you the current volume on each one. Because they're independently addressable, but the hearing aid technology has come a long way. So, if you click on it, there's different modes. Like there's a tinnitus training mode. There's a crowded room mode. There's a standard mode. So, like if you find yourself in a crowded room and you've got amplifiers in your ears, it can really get overwhelming. So you want to switch the mode, and and you can turn the volume. It's got a master volume. So it's a nice little complication that's all made by Apple. There's an app for these things, but I never go in it. The Apple accessibility feature is very well done. And it gives you everything you need on a single watch face. It's nice.
That's cool. So how do you think about like using your Apple? Like what are the main use cases when you think this is what I do on my Apple Watch, or this is what it's for? Where does that land for you?
For me, it's primarily, a way to tell time. Let's start there. I grew up wearing watches where they just told time, so that's a thing that's still wired into me. And what's today's date? That's another good one to have on there.
The date is very important to David, if you remember from a past episode.
Yeah, exactly. I like to know the date. I have it everywhere.
He's got 3 of 6 complications, or just the date. No,
there we go. I should do that just for you, Steven.
that would have been a joke. Send me an Apple Watch.
But of course, you get a lot more out of this. I do sleep tracking probably 3-4 nights a week. I don't do it every night, but I do pay attention to that data. And I think it's good for that. I use it for, I use Siri on the watch. I use it to like trigger workouts and set timers and things in addition to the complications. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I like the health stuff on there. Like it's always good having it. You and I both are kind of on a health journey right now, and it's a useful tool for that. And I feel like the notifications are nice too. If you're stingy about the notifications that come through to your wrist, the ones that do actually matter. Like if my wrist taps, it's probably my wife or somebody important, and then it's worth checking out. I think that when you wear it allows you to keep your phone in your pocket or leave it somewhere else more often. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing too.
I think the notifications is a huge deal, and you really have to be aggressive at turning them off and only allowing the key notifications through. Otherwise, it's just more noise. Yeah. And being on your wrist, I feel like the cost is even higher than just notifications on your phone.
Yeah.
And so, I'm very aggressive about turning all those off. I basically have it for text messages and for like money transactions. So like, my bank, I let Wells Fargo send me notifications. And if I swipe down right now, I have a couple, like my Apple Card, which I only use for some larger purchases. I'll allow those things, but really not others. But when it comes to my use cases, health is a big deal. I wear it every night to sleep. And so I kind of like seeing that. And, Apple will send you a notification now every morning, and it'll tell you, hey, your sleep actually stunk last night, and you did horrible, and then you feel bad. And then sometimes it's like, hey, you did a great job. So, but at the very least, if I'm in the middle of the day and I'm not feeling great, I can look in the health app on my phone and say, well, how did I sleep last night? And even if it's not perfectly accurate, I can just get an idea compared to my other nights. Yeah. And then the activity tracking and calories with food noms is a huge deal for me. I'm trying to be in a calorie deficit right now. And so, I have a certain amount of calories per day. And then if I do a workout or just my regular activity, my Apple Watch is calculating that all day. And food noms will adjust what my max calories can be today with that activity in mind. Yeah. And that has been super key in the last 7 months as I've been tracking this stuff. And so that is now kind of my primary, most needed use case. And I use the voice assistant the most on Apple Watch. If I'm creating a reminder, if I'm controlling my smart home, and sometimes sending quick texts, I will do it from my watch primarily. And I have the Hey Dingus turned off on my iPhone and on many HomePods because, once there's a bunch of devices listening, it can be complicated. But I will raise my wrist and start talking, and I find that to be one of the most useful for the Apple Watch. And last couple of things, I ping my iPhone sometimes. My wife uses the pinging the iPhone from the watch all the time.
Yeah,
I hear that ping all the time.
Yeah.
And last thing for me is I actually use the flashlight more than I thought I would. One, in the middle of the night, because I'm wearing it every night, and if I go up to go to the bathroom or whatever, the flashlight on the Apple Watch is like the perfect brightness where I can control center, flashlight, point it downwards, and that's how you kind of activate the flashlight to be bright is, point your wrist to the floor, and it's the perfect amount of light that's not too bright, gets you where you need to go, but not like wake you up. And if I ever need to go outside and like do something with the pool equipment or something outside in the backyard and it's super dark, the flashlight on the Apple Watch Ultra, which will basically turn the screen white at full brightness, is actually really useful. And so I do that pretty often.
Yeah, me too. My biggest use, I'm going to save for when we discuss the action button. But that's my killer feature for the Apple Watch. So I'll just tease that one as coming forward. All right, Stephen, it's time to fess up. Let's talk about our Apple Watch bands.
I've been waiting for this moment all week. What total number? About how many watch bands do you say you have?
This is where the shame comes.
No shame. I mean, this is the great thing about Apple Watch is that every band from the original model all the way till today still fits and still works. So it's a
13.
collection. Oh, that's nothing, David. That is nothing.
Okay.
I have, let's see, I have over 25 watch bands.
Well, you win. You win.
So I have here, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes. I have a photo that I'll show here on YouTube so you can see everything at once, and then I'll also link it in the show notes for audio. But this is my entire watch band collection, and you'll see here I love solo loops, and so I have lots of solo loop colors, and I love the braided solo loops, so I have a bunch of those. And then I do have some third-party Apple Watch bands from Nomad, from Ryan London for leather. I have the Ocean band for Apple Watch Ultra. I have a Sandmark link bracelet. I have one that's like gray tweed that I don't even know if they make anymore. It's from a company called Vario, Vario. I'll try to find links. And I got a bunch of watch bands, David.
Yeah, I have had more over the years, and that's one of the benefits of being one of my daughter's boyfriends is you get Apple Watch bands randomly after a while. Because I had originally bought a bunch from Amazon, and over the years I've kind of refined it to primarily Apple bands that I've got. My favorite is the elastic Velcro band for the Ultra. What is the name of that class?
Alpine Loop?
Alpine Loop. And I've got a gray one on right now. I also have a brown and a blue one, so that's kind of fun. I've got a couple leather ones from like the old days. Your point earlier about them working forever is really nice. Like I have a red one and I have a blue one. And it's nice when you're going somewhere fancy to just dress the watch up with these. And these I got, 10 years ago. And they're great. Occasionally the rumor comes out that they're going to change that lug system. And I hope they don't ever. I don't know why they would, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been working so well. They've had lots of different sizes. And one thing, so I loved my original Milanese loop. And one thing, someone just on social media stated, the nice thing about the original Milanese is it had the magnet clasp that you can adjust, infinite adjustment in real time. And I missed that because it didn't really match the Ultra titanium. Yeah. So I didn't use the old Milanese with the new Ultra. So I finally bit the bullet last year and bought the Ultra Milanese loop, which has like more of the natural titanium look. And I do really like it. This is the one I wear if I'm going to one of my wife's orchestra concerts. There you go. You got it too. Yeah. I wear it to the concerts or if I'm dressing up. But this Milanese is not infinitely adjustable as easily. It is infinite adjust, but you do have to move the clasp up and down, as opposed to the old Milanese loop, which just had the magnet that you could literally, if your wrist just feels a little different later in the day, you can quickly just move that magnet a couple millimeters and you'd be good to go. But I still like the Ultra for when I'm dressing up, the Milanese.
All right. So we both got a pretty healthy collection of these bands. How often do you change it?
Not super often. I'll use a solo loop all day, every day for pretty much all the time. I'm using a yellow one right now, and I match my face to it. I will throw on a braided solo loop if I'm going out maybe on a date or we're going out to dinner. And I like, the braided solo loops. I might wear one of the Black Unity ones, or green's my favorite color, and I have lots of different green ones. So I'll put in like a mint green braided solo loop. So I might wear that out. And then like tonight, there's a celebration my wife is doing for a school thing. And tonight I'll wear the Milanese. But I always go back to the solo loop when I get back home. I always go back to the solo loop.
Yeah, I change it every day, honestly. Every day
Do
I wear
you?
it. I'm like, hey, I'm wearing a green shirt today. Which one is going to go with the green shirt?
Oh.
And I like it. I don't know. It's kind of fun. I guess I'm a bit of a fashion guy. I like my watch band to match what I'm wearing.
I should change mine more often. I have enough. I should just change them more often.
Yeah,
That's what
why
I should
not?
do.
They're very easy to change, and
Yeah.
I would go even with my analog watch. I wear NATO straps with it for the same reason. You can just thread a new one in every time you put it on.
There you
Kind
go.
of fun.
What is there any that you regret, or one that you're really glad you bought?
The red and the blue leather ones, when I bought them, I'm like, that seems a little ostentatious, but I bought them anyway. And this was, like I said, a long time ago. But occasionally we go out at Christmas and I put the red one on, or we go, go somewhere fancy and I put the blue one on. When I went to Mike Hurley's wedding, I wore the blue one, and Marco says, hey, that's really nice the way you dressed up your watch. And I thought, oh, even Marco, he's a watch guy. He gets it. I think it's kind of fun. I bought the Milanese. That's my most recent edition. I bought that when that first came out. I had it about a year, and I've worn it like 3 times. This one, I don't regret it, but I am definitely not taking advantage of it as much because I've never been much of a metal watch band guy.
Right. One that I am glad I bought, and it was a limited edition. This is Nomad's Apple Watch strap, and this came out during the Olympics when they were in Paris.
Yeah.
And so it's a red, white, and blue striped, and I wore it that whole Olympic summer, so I wore it that whole summer. But then it also doubles as like a July 4th watch band.
Yeah.
So if we're going out for July 4th, I'll do the red, white, and blue. And it's technically the France flag, but, it's red, white, and blue. So it works.
I've got a really nice Nomad orange strap that I like.
Oh,
Nomad makes great watch straps. That's like one of the third parties that I use. But I like my little collection of Apple Watch bands, and glad you do too.
Send us photos of your favorite watch bands, especially if they're third party, because there's a ton of them out there, and there's a lot of like inexpensive ones on Amazon, but they can also be pretty good. One that I will often get compliments on is this Vario, which is like a gray tweed, and it's just not one you see very often with the Apple Watch.
Yeah,
and
that's nice.
People tend to like that one.
I think I'm gonna have to buy a couple more now that I'm watching your collection. I got space now.
You got space, and so one thing too is these bamboo Apple Watch holders, strap holders. I got these on Amazon. I'll find a link to it. But there's also, have you heard of the new Apple Unsold website?
No.
So this is an unofficial website. I will link it in the show notes. But Apple Unsold has products from Apple stores that I don't know how they're smuggling these things out of the stores, or maybe it's former employees or whatever. But they have things like the Apple Watch demo charger. They have the Apple Vision Pro tray.
Yeah.
And they also have the bamboo, the official Apple ones, the ones they use in the store. And sometimes they'll come in stock. And so I have a notification set up through changedetection.io for when this Apple Watch band tray comes in stock. It's expensive. They're selling these for like $230.
Wow.
But they sell out immediately. And if you want like an official Apple tray that was used in an Apple store, you can get it, and a bunch of other accessories from Apple Unsold, which is kind of funny.
My guess is Apple is behind this. They don't want to admit it, though.
Really? You think so?
They got all this old stuff. They want to, make a few bucks on it.
This is the Tim Cook era.
My watch storage system is a 3D printed Gridfinity bucket. So I'm a big Gridfinity guy, and so it fits nicely in my thing. And honestly, I kind of treat that bin as the limit of how many Apple Watches I need. If I fill it up, I'm like, okay, somebody's getting true. One of these. I'm going to get a new one.
That's fine. All right, well, let's do a preferences mini lightning round here before we go on to some of the other bigger topics.
Okay.
Sound on or off?
Off, but off in my brain and on in my heart. Does that make sense?
Sure. I think I feel that too. Mine's off, but also I hear the little dings sometimes, phantom dings.
Sometimes I turn it on just because I like the sound of it.
Yeah.
And then I start recording a podcast and it goes off and my co-host looks at me like I'm a moron.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Always on display. I keep mine on. How about you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the benefit, right?
That's it. And it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
The battery protection thing, what do you do with that?
I hate that. I'm going to run that battery into the ground, even if it messes up my calories for the day.
See, that is the thing. Like, I realized my Apple Watch Ultra, I thought my battery life was not doing well, but it might be. You have to go to settings, battery health, and there's the optimized charge limit. And I just need to disable that. Yeah. I had it on, but I didn't. You have to like turn off until tomorrow or turn off permanently. I just turned off permanently. I don't want to deal with that. Yeah. And then sleep tracking, we talked a little bit about. You track a few days a week?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm wearing the watch, I wear it to bed. You know, if I put the other watch on, then I probably don't wear it to bed. But also, if I'm having sleep problems, I will double down on it. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm just not sleeping well lately, I'll wear it straight for like 2 or 3 weeks and kind of get to the bottom of it. Okay.
I wear mine every night, and that leads to the charging rhythm, which is I will throw it on the charger at night, usually between 10:30 and 11, and I'll put it back on when I go to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
How long is that? Like how long is it on the charger?
About an hour and a half, maybe an hour. And sometimes if I forget and then I throw it on there and then like, oh, shoot, I'm about to go to sleep and it's only 20 minutes, then I'll get the notification the next day, now that my watch is over 2 years old, of like the 10% battery warning.
Yeah.
And I've never charged during the day. I just let it like go into low power mode and just kind of keep trucking along. But I do notice if I miss that. So I try to at least charge it for an hour and a half at night.
I'm the same. I'll also charge it in the morning, while you're getting ready, taking a shower, whatever. I keep a separate charger in my studio. So if in the middle of the day it's low, I can put it on there. But then I usually set an alarm so I remember to go get it back.
Ah, that's good. And I wish, just a side note, Shortcuts automations, there's so many great automations that could exist, but the Apple Watch can't trigger them.
Yeah.
And you can set Shortcuts automations that like change your watch face, change your Apple Watch always on display. You can change those things from Shortcuts, but you can't have like when Apple Watch is put on charger, do X. And when it's taken off of the charger, do Y. And so hopefully that would be great if Apple could add some of those Shortcuts automations to the Apple Watch specifically. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I mean, cross-platform Shortcuts just needs work. That's something where they need, and this is just one more example of that.
Yeah. And we talked about the voice assistant on the wrist. I use mine all the time. You use it pretty often?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And like you, I use my voice with the watch. I always hold the button down on the phone. I never use my voice on the phone. And it just works that way for me. I don't use it on the HomePods. The watch is the place to use your voice to trigger that.
For sure. I still use it on my HomePods here in my office because I'll yell video scenes at it and then it'll set all the lights, but mostly from the watch. And then my last question for you, well, two, Apple Pay. When you're going to do Apple Pay, do you do the watch? Do you do the phone?
If the watch is on my wrist, I use the watch. I prefer the watch.
Same. Yeah. And it feels faster. It feels easy. You just double click the side. You don't have to Face ID, which, you would have to Face ID if you do the phone. So always on the watch.
And it lets you keep your phone in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And then action button. You said that was a big deal for you. So what do you do with the action button?
So long-term listeners will probably have heard me talk about this before, but there is an app called Whisper Memos. And they were a sponsor of my podcast years ago, but I really like this app. And it's a kind of a unipurpose app for me, but I've been buying it for years. And it uses the Whisper engine. And the way it works, it's an iPhone app. So you open it up, it starts, it's like drafts kind of for your voice. It just opens up, you start talking. It does a good job transcribing. And because I use drafts, it also sends that text straight to drafts to my inbox. Now, if you don't have the drafts connection, it does it in the app, which is just as good, I guess. But, I often dictate things. I think of something I want to do or an idea for a newsletter, and I just like kind of rip it out. I just talk through the whole thing I want to do right there. And it's great on the phone, but it gets wings when you attach it to the Apple Watch because it works. I think the way I have it connected is it's a shortcut. They have a single action. They have one shortcut action. It's, trigger a whisper memo. And that works on the watch. So I created a shortcut, and the shortcut has one action, and I attach that to the action button. So I can be going anywhere, and I can reach down and push that orange button and just start talking. And when I get back to my Mac, whatever I said was sitting in my drafts inbox. It is super powerful. Like yesterday, I was in the car wash, getting the car washed, all the machinery going on around me.
Yeah.
And I dictated the outline for this week's newsletter, just sitting in the car wash, talking to my watch. I don't know, it's Dick Tracy or what you'd call it, but it's like, this to me is like my favorite thing to do with an Apple Watch because I'm one of those guys that has a lot of ideas, and I don't like to carry them around. And you just push the button on your watch, talk to it for a few minutes, off it goes. And I just can't tell you the number of times I've used that. Or I'll be driving down the road and think of an email that I definitely need to send to somebody. I'll just hit the button and say the email. And then when I get back to the studio, it's waiting for me to process.
I should try that. I've been trying to do more voice dictation just in general because I'm not one to ever do voice dictation anywhere, even like text messages.
Yeah.
And when I do intentionally think like, let me just dictate this, I'm like, wow, I can write a lot more if I just dictate this than type it out. Yeah. And so I should practice that.
I do day one entries with this. I mean, it's just I can't tell you the number of things I do this way. And I've tried, like you can use the built-in voice recorder app. That's built in. It's kind of nice. It gives you visual feedback. You can see it's actually recording, so everything's working, right? But then you've got to go into the app, hit the transcript button. The transcript's okay, but it's not as good as the Whisper Memos one is. Drafts also has a method for you to do this directly into Drafts, but it's not as good. I just find Whisper Memos for me is kind of the happy spot for that. I'll be curious to see because I'm a big fan of Whisper Flow, which is the one I use on the Mac for this stuff. And people tell me, why do you need like 3 apps to do this stuff? And like I just kind of want the best in class, no matter what format I'm on. And I could see Apple like really improving this. So I don't know if Whisper Memos is going to be my thing forever. But the idea of pushing that action button on the Ultra Watch and talking and having those words show up somewhere else, no matter what software stack you're using, to me is very powerful.
That's really good. And I have created shortcuts for people where Bear Notes can dictate voice memos.
Yeah.
And you can have Apple Notes do it as well if you create a shortcut where you dictate text first and then create a new note or even append to a note. And so I have one shortcut that you could just have one note that's like watch memos, and it will just always append to the bottom of that. But having a dedicated app for it, like you're saying, is I think has a lot of benefits too. And I just have my action button set to flashlight, so I got to do something more fun with that.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like you use it probably a lot.
I use the flashlight a lot, and I do hold. So you can also hold the action button and get another option. And so I hold it and set that to workout, and so I can hold it and choose.
So another thing I've done with the action button in the past is I have made it contextually aware of focus mode.
Yes.
And so it will do different things based on what focus mode you're in. But I found for the watch at least, because you've got an action button on the phone, that's a whole nother conversation. But for the watch at least, I just want it to dictate anytime. And like I said, I use it multiple times a day, and that button gets pressed a lot.
I'm gonna try that this week. I want to change it to a dictation thing. That'll be good. All right, some of your favorite apps. Tell me, what's your rubric for making a good watch app?
I feel like I had so much hope for apps back in the day when the first Apple Watch came out. And I feel like the apps are, there's only so much you can do with that little screen and that little processor. So I have not gone as deep down it as you have. So I'm looking forward to you convincing me. But for me, you want to think about, what is an app's job on your wrist? Is it something that you interact with, or is it just glanceable information? I mean, obviously glanceable information works a lot better on your wrist than interactive. Like I remember at one point I used to try to run the OmniFocus watch app, and it was like, no, this isn't going to happen. It's OmniFocus. There's just not, it doesn't work. And the other thing I like to think about with an app is this designed to be a really good complication, or is this designed to be an app you run on your wrist? And I find generally I lean towards glanceable complication first design apps, because that's generally what I want to do on my watch. And then the other thing for me is the speed on open. Like if you have a more complicated app, does it take more than 3 seconds to get to what you need to do? If it does, then it's not going to be an app I use.
Right. No, that's good. And I will say I don't use apps a lot, like a long time on the Apple Watch, but there are some apps that have a lot of utility if they're just there and at the ready.
Yeah.
And so for me, AnyList is a huge one, especially grocery shopping when you're wanting to check something off your grocery list. And I'm very particular about my grocery list organization. Like I have the categories in the order of how I'm going through the store, so I'm checking things off very chronologically. And the AnyList on the watch means I can just tap it and keep pushing and use both hands for what I'm doing, as opposed to holding the phone and trying to check stuff off, push the cart, and get stuff in. I'm like Eye of the Tiger in the grocery store. Like I'm like, all right, let's go.
I can go follow you around in a grocery store one day. Just
I don't play around. I'm like, I'm going for it.
Grocery ninja.
So, that's right. So AnyList is huge. Home Pass, which is an app I meant to mention during the Smart Home episode. Home Pass is a great app for saving your Matter and HomeKit or Apple Home codes. And you can save it on your iPhone. You can export them as PDFs for backup. But I have a lot of devices like smart shades where sometimes I have to factory reset it for whatever reason. It doesn't happen often, but enough where having the Matter pairing code easily accessible is really useful. And HomePass has a great watch app where I can set devices to be available on the watch, and then I can open the QR code, so my watch is the code, and then scan it with my phone.
Makes
so I don't have to do the thing of like going to the Photos app, tapping and holding. And that allows me, if I'm having to factory reset a few devices, to quickly access my Matter codes from my wrist, which is really useful. I'll say Bear has a really good Apple Watch app. You can create notes with your voice and see your notes. Capture is another great app I've been using more often. I've tried to do a weekly newsletter more often now, and the Capture app is great on iPhone and Mac, but it also has an Apple Watch app, and you can voice capture something there as well. I've been using Overcast. I actually did a whole video about the best podcast apps on iPhone right now, and I've switched to Overcast as my default, and so I'm using that on the watch too. Which is your podcast app of choice, by the way?
Overcast, yeah.
Okay, well, you're there.
It's made by a friend to begin with, but it's a great app,
It's a great app, and the transcripts that he's added is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And the last couple I mentioned, there's a teleprompter app. I use Teleprompter Pro. I don't use it as much now, but when I was working at Riverside and previously, I would do a lot of script-based videos.
Yeah.
And I would use the Teleprompter app actually on my iPhone because I have the Parrot teleprompter, which actually uses your iPhone as the prompter.
Yeah.
And the Parrot prompter actually screws onto your lens. And so you can use your phone as your teleprompter. It screws on. And then there's an Apple Watch app that lets you, start, stop, or scrub through your transcript, your teleprompter.
Yeah.
And so that's useful. I'm liking the Mercury Weather app. Shortcuts, I have a few on that I run on the Apple Watch. And then Keynote, you can actually control a Keynote presentation from your Apple Watch and have it be running on your iPad or your Mac. And I still don't trust the Apple Watch to do that per se, like 100%. Like I still want to be near my laptop when I'm doing a presentation, like at a conference. But you can do it from the watch, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that always feels like a parlor trick to me. I think you're better to have a remote in your pocket, where you can push a button. You don't have to look at it. But yeah, it's cool. Like you, you had one on your list called Capture, though. What is that?
Capture, it's a great app for saving bookmarks. It's like a bookmark save for later app.
Okay.
But on the Apple Watch, you can also, and this is also on the phone, you can use it to capture voice memos or text notes as well. And then you can add it to lists here in the Capture app. So I have a bunch of lists for different topics. And what I really love is on the iPhone, if I'm wanting to save something, when you run it from the share sheet on your iPhone, iPad, or Mac, you'll see its Capture is right there in the share sheet. And when you tap it, you can actually add it to a list right here from this splash screen while you're saving it. So it kind of lets you organize it into a list at the point of saving it. And so I've been using it on my iPhone to save stuff for my newsletter and for podcasting. And then the Capture app on Apple Watch lets you just talk to it to capture something, or you can browse your past captures. So you can see the things that you have saved. You can access it. You can even access your different lists on the Apple Watch app. I know it's upside down, but like I can go to one of my lists and see the different things I've captured or add something new to it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think you interact with your watch more than I do. Because for me, it's more of a reference idea than like interaction stuff. So the Drafts app, I think, is very good on the watch. And that is kind of my version of Capture. Drafts is my universal capture box, digital capture box. I have an analog thing I carry around with me, and I have the Drafts. And each day I clean both of them out. So like everything drives to it. For the longest time, I kept Drafts as a widget, but the Whisper memos kind of fixed that or improved upon that, because now I just talk and it ends up there. I do prefer the Fantastical calendar stuff that they've got over the native Apple calendar stuff. And that's got better. In the old days, it felt like the third-party calendar apps were always a little behind. Like Apple is getting synced more often. But whatever they've changed the last few years, it seems like it's good enough now that I can use a third-party app. And I occasionally throw a shortcut in there, too. I'll put a shortcut together for something or another. But I largely use the built-in stuff. One of the complications I didn't mention earlier, that like on my Disneyland face, is the photo trigger, where you set the photo down like on a trash can or something, and you stand back with your wife and hit the button on your wrist. That's a really powerful feature. And like you should be using that if you're not.
And I did use that a lot when I was using my iPhone to record videos of myself before I got the Osmo Pocket 3. Yeah. I would use the Apple Watch, the camera app, to frame myself up and start recording. And that is super useful. And I use the Fantastical app on Apple Watch a lot. When I was working in previous jobs and I had a lot of meetings, having that up next meeting as a complication on the watch face was critical for me. And thankfully, I don't have a lot of meetings now. And so I kind of know my schedule is pretty set. I'm thankful for that. And I don't need to have that complication on the watch right now. But if you have a lot of meetings, having them on your watch is a huge deal. So I know I have some personal stories about Apple Watch and health. Do you have anything that you've used it or experienced the benefits there?
I've got a couple doozies. A good friend of mine was feeling fine. His Apple Watch started telling him there's something wrong. He went to the doctor, and like 48 hours later, he had a zipper, and he thinks it saved his life. So needless to say, he will be buying Apple products for a while. The other one is my wife. I shared this on the show at the time. My wife, Daisy, she had a heart attack December of 2024. And, she's been wearing an avid Apple Watch user. But what had happened was one of my daughter's boyfriend, it's a long story, bought them tickets for the Taylor Swift concert up in Seattle, I think it was. And but he got sick, so my wife went with them. And they had this girls' weekend up there. They had a great time. She did not bring her Apple Watch charger. And so she got home. She didn't wear the watch because the battery was dead. I took them to lunch. On the way home, she had a heart attack. It was scary, but she's okay. And when we got home, we started to realize, it wasn't, it was a serious thing, but it was, when we got home, it started in the car. We got home. I'm like, this is not right. And I actually put my watch on her and ran the ECG, and it said something's weird, and immediately threw her in a car and took her off to the hospital. And but yeah, that was a big deal, and that's why I said earlier, my wife always has an Apple Watch charger and always wears an Apple Watch now.
Yeah, I have a personal friend who I knew closely, where she was a younger person at the time. I think she was about 17. And she got a elevated heart rate warning on her Apple Watch. She felt okay, but went to the doctor just to check it out anyways, and found out she was actually in kidney failure at that moment. And if not for that notification, she probably would not have gone to check it out. She might have gotten worse symptoms later, but that allowed her to get on the transplant list and things like that. There was actually a whole news article about it, and Tim Cook wrote her a letter and stuff. But it was really key. And now my mom, she has had some heart issues in the last few months, It's been improving, and so it's
Yeah.
kind of on the upswing. She got on medication, but we got her an Apple Watch a few Mother's Days ago, so 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But that has been, it's positive in the sense of like, I tell her, even if you feel weird or something, if your heart rate dips super low or goes super high, your Apple Watch should tell you. Like, it will
Yeah.
tell you. And so you can have solace that if you've not gotten that notification, you should be okay. But you can also run an ECG whenever you feel like it, if you
Yeah.
want to like kind of have another layer of protection there or notification. And so that's been, two sides to that coin. One, there's kind of like, do I need to check this more often than not? And so there's kind of an anxiety that gets introduced there.
Yeah.
But also having the peace of mind that something is watching your heart rate all the time has been positive. And I also got my mom the Withings blood pressure cuff that syncs with Apple Health. And so she takes her blood pressure multiple times a day. That syncs automatically to the Health app. And if you weren't aware, you can share health information to family members and trusted contacts. And so I can actually go in the Health app on my iPhone and see her heart rate information for the day and historically. And I can see her blood pressure readings that she's taken. So if you have family members that you're trying to keep an eye on or see how they're doing, having the Apple Watch plus Apple Health and sharing that data through the Health app, it can really go a long way just to having the information, being aware of it, and medications, which I think we'll touch on too. You can keep track of your family member or friend taking their medications. So if they log it in their Health app, you can see when they've taken it, which ones they've taken, and if you need to send a reminder to them.
Yeah. And there's third-party apps for medications, but the built-in is pretty good. And, again, all that stuff is data you can share with your doctor as well.
Correct. And you can you send it to cardiologists and you can download reports and even like labs. If you get like blood work done and it's at a participating place, which most of them are, and you log into that account, whether it's like my exam or whatever, like that information will go into the Apple Health app once it hits your portal. And then Apple Health, like, it tries to be careful not to tell you like definitive information about your health, but it will say like, yeah, your glucose is in this range and here's what that means, or here's like your vitamin D might be a little low. Yeah. And it will give you some of that reporting right in the Health app, which I think is valuable to have.
Yeah, I agree. And the all this stuff you can take or leave, but and I know people argue that the data on these things isn't 100% accurate or medically certified, but it's a point of reference. And like if it's watching your ticker and says something is a little odd, it's not telling you, it's not diagnosing you, it's just telling you to go get some treatment. And there's nothing wrong with going to the doctor and finding out that it's no big deal, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the balance of like not falling into worrying about it, but being able to kind of trust it to a sense. And trusting a piece of technology with your heart health is pretty significant. Like that feels maybe daunting, but Apple tells these stories almost every event. There's a video about the Apple Watch and talks about how it saved this person's life or this person was able to get help because of what their watch told them. Yeah. So Fitness Plus, my wife uses it all the time. She does Fitness Plus workouts almost every day, and it is so cool. Like the rings on screen, the integration with Apple Watch. Have you used that? Or you? And Daisy?
I've got some favorite trainers. I like the.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Who do you like?
Benna. Jeez.
What workout? Like what?
I do the
category?
body weight exercises.
Yeah.
Those are the ones. 'Cause I don't have a lot of equipment, but I do like the body weight exercises. Yeah. There's a Filipina one, and my wife's Filipino, so we always do hers.
Oh, that's fun.
I forget her name though. Please don't tell anybody I forgot.
No, it's fine. There's great trainers, and my wife really enjoys those.
Yeah.
I was also curious. So there's a lot of notifications your Apple Watch might send you about stand, hand washing, noise environment.
Yeah.
Which of those do you have on and off?
The only one that's of interest to me is noise environment because I already have hearing loss, so I do try and pay attention to that. But I don't need it to tell me when to stand and when to wash my hands.
I have the noise one on. I also have the stand alert on because I can get really involved in editing a video or working, and I like knowing that I've not stood in the last hour, and whether I choose to do it or not, I just like knowing. The hand washing one, like I'm pretty in depth on my hand washing already. Like,
Yeah.
I do that for long enough. But sometimes that notification would just pop up, and I'd be like, no. So I turn that one off.
Yeah.
No no hand washing for me. I do have fall detection and crash detection on, although that's never hit. Although my son, who skateboards, he has fall detection on his Apple Watch.
Okay.
And when he's at the skate park, he has told me he's gotten that fall detection a lot when he has fallen.
Yeah.
So it definitely works.
Yeah.
It definitely works. So
yeah, I keep those things turned on. I've never gotten one, but it's nice to know. And I think the more the safety stuff you can use, the better.
Yeah. Do you have the sleep apnea warning thing? That's a newer one.
It's turned on. I've never experienced it. I don't think I have a problem with that, but I guess it's good to know.
That's one area where I feel like ignorance is bliss. I don't think I have apnea, and so I also don't have it turned on.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine myself wearing that equipment if I did. But yeah,
I mean, my good friend Nate. He wears a CPAP, and it really helps him sleep. I do know, like years ago, when I was much heavier, I knew I struggled with apnea because I would like wake up in the middle of the night choking, and then I wake up with headaches, which means you are not breathing for long periods while you were sleeping.
Not getting enough oxygen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've lost a bunch of weight, and I have not had those symptoms since. And so if that ever happens again, maybe I'll turn on sleep apnea notifications. But yeah, I feel like I'm good. What do we think? Apple Watch Ultra versus Series. I talked a little bit about my preference for 2026 if you're going to buy one now. If you can not buy one till September, do that and wait for the new models to come out.
Yeah.
But what would you advise people?
No, I think it's a personal thing. Like we said, I think if you go in the store and you put on an Ultra, you'll know if you like it or not. Like I have a friend, she's petite and she wears an Ultra because she likes all the power, and she's actually an outdoors person. She goes to Yosemite all the time and she uses all those features. So she has a very small wrist and she wears an Ultra. So it's okay. It just depends on, your usage and the look and the fit, and it's a personal thing. But whichever watch you go with, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, and they're all very fast. They all use the same chip. The biggest difference with the Ultra is the dual GPS and also satellite SOS on the Ultra 3 now. And, of course, you have the action button and the louder speaker on the Ultra. If you're an outdoorsy person, the Ultra's got a lot of cool features. If you're camping, hiking, those kinds of activities, definitely, I think that's a great option. And battery life, even if you don't do those things, but you just want the most battery life in an Apple Watch, that's the Ultra series. And, if you just prefer it, like the bigger crown like me, that's...
Now, you have younger kids. Do they wear Apple Watches?
They do.
Apple Watch in the family, right?
Yeah, all three of my kids wear Apple Watch. My oldest has an iPhone, so his is paired with his iPhone. But my middle and youngest, they have Apple Watches in family setup.
Yeah.
Which is nice that it's a feature. There's a lot of things that are a pain in the neck in the family setup. And like them not being able to really do anything with the watch settings-wise. I have to do it from my iPhone. I have to be in proximity so it connects to Bluetooth to manage their Apple Watch. But... my middle son, he uses the heck out of his Apple Watch. I mean, he listens to music that's on the watch where, he doesn't have an iPhone or iPad around.
Yeah.
He does messaging from the watch. And so it's nice that it's an option. And I definitely use it. And for younger kids, with GPS, cellular, being able to text and call, cellular connectivity is sometimes spotty, because the Apple Watch just has a small cellular radio. But it is really useful if your kids, you have younger kids, they can get one.
Oh, last question. When you travel, do you put your boarding pass on your watch?
Yeah, I do all that kind of stuff from the watch. I still have my iPhone at the ready, just in case, but I try to do it from the watch. It's fun. What about you?
I don't put it on the watch because I always feel like the way they want you to scan it, it's an odd angle,
It's
so
awkward, yeah.
I actually do that on the phone.
Okay.
All right, well, I think we did a good job covering our watches today. Hopefully we gave you some new ideas, some new app ideas or complications you may want to use. If you guys think I'm nuts and the watch faces are perfectly adequate, let me know. And I will put you in the same bucket I put the people that told me The Last Jedi. It was a good movie.
That's hilarious. Well, and thanks to our sponsors this week, Mercury Weather, Squarespace, 1Password. We're going to go talk about Apple Home now and more power users. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.